Georgina had walked in, radiant as always. Her gown cascaded like liquid silk, every bead catching the light as she moved. She had practiced her smile in mirrors for months, rehearsed the way she would greet Ronaldo's family, and rehearsed the poised, graceful persona that the world expected of her. Tonight, she would shine. She would be the perfect bride-to-be, the perfect partner, the perfect symbol of elegance beside a football legend. But she hadn't accounted for Irina Shayk. The moment Irina entered the hall, the temperature seemed to drop. Cameras immediately swarmed. Whispers threaded through the crowd like a fast-moving current, and a wave of tension rippled invisibly through the air. Irina was flawless, confident, dripping in designer elegance, but there was fire in her eyes. A quiet, dangerous fire that promised trouble. She didn't need an invitation. The room seemed to bend around her presence, and all attention shifted. Georgina noticed instantly. She tried to maintain her composure, to smile politely at well-wishers, to focus on the music and the soft clink of glasses. But every glance toward the entrance made her heart tighten. She saw Irina's gaze sweep across the room, sharp, calculated, stopping briefly on her. In that frozen instant, Georgina felt the air thicken. Something in Irina's eyes said this was not a casual visit. This was a mission. The ceremony began smoothly enough, but the tension simmered beneath every smile, every handshake, every champagne toast. Guests speculated quietly, exchanging glances, sensing that something monumental was about to happen. And then it did. It was during the reception, after the toasts had concluded, and the laughter had risen like music when Irina approached. She moved through the crowd with a predator's grace, her eyes locked on Georgina. For a fleeting moment, Georgina thought she would pass by, perhaps even extend a polite nod. But the nod never came. Irina stopped a mere 2 steps away, and the room seemed to hold its breath. The first words were sharp, curt, laced with venom hidden beneath a veneer of civility. "Congratulations," Irina said, her voice smooth but icy. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. Georgina, still poised, responded politely. "Thank you. It means a lot." But Irina wasn't finished. Her hand moved to the nearby table, and in a motion so fast it seemed rehearsed, she grabbed a glass of red wine. Time seemed to slow. The red liquid arced through the air like a comet, striking Georgina squarely in the shoulder. Gasps erupted instantly from every direction. The soft clinking of glasses shattered into chaos. Wine poured down the front of Georgina's pristine gown, staining the silk with a deep, violent red. Shock froze her in place. For a moment, she couldn't move, couldn't speak. The laughter, the music, the joy of the wedding, all of it vanished. She could only feel the heat of the stain spreading across her chest and the burning humiliation that accompanied it. Irina's gaze didn't waver. "Don't think you can just take everything," she hissed under her breath, before turning sharply and walking away. Ronaldo's reaction was immediate. He strode toward Georgina, anger flaring in his eyes. "Irina!" he shouted, his voice cutting through the shocked silence of the room. Guests instinctively stepped back, sensing the eruption of something far larger than a simple confrontation. Georgina, trembling but regaining control, tried to pull herself together. Her face was a mask of calm, though inside, fury and humiliation collided. "It's okay," she whispered, barely audible. But even she knew it wasn't okay. Not even close. Irina paused a few steps away, turning just enough to deliver a smirk that felt like a dagger. The cameras had captured everything, of course. Social media would explode within minutes. This wasn't just a wedding scandal. It was a public war. Guests murmured, some approaching to help, others stepping back in awe of the unfolding drama. The tension was palpable. Every whisper, every side glance, every breath seemed heavy with anticipation. No one had ever witnessed such a brazen act in a wedding setting, especially not a wedding that was supposed to be perfect, elegant, untouchable. Ronaldo stood by Georgina, protective, furious, yet trying to maintain composure for the cameras. "Are you hurt?" he asked, taking off his jacket to cover her shoulders and shield her from further embarrassment. "I'm fine," she said again, but her voice had steel now. Her eyes, wet with both shock and fury, locked on Irina. She would not let this slide. Irina's departure didn't end the chaos. The media descended instantly, flashing lights capturing every moment of the brawl. Guests whispered feverishly, speculating about the history between the women, the possible motives, and the implications for the wedding. Meanwhile, Georgina retreated briefly to a quiet corner, attempting to regain her composure. Her hand shook slightly as she dabbed at the wine, but her mind raced. How could she let this happen? How could she let anyone humiliate her on this night? Ronaldo returned to her side, offering quiet reassurance. It's just a moment. It won't define tonight. But Georgina knew it would. The cameras had captured it all. The trajectory of the glass, the shocked expressions, the stunned crowd. The footage would go viral within minutes, and she would be the center of attention for more than just her wedding beauty. Dolores, watching from a distance, furrowed her brow. She had expected tension. That much was inevitable with Irina in the room. But even she hadn't anticipated such a blatant, public confrontation. Her son's protective instincts flared, and she knew she had to step in, but also knew she couldn't. This was a battle that wasn't hers to fight, yet its fallout would ripple through the family for years. Meanwhile, the guests tried to resume their celebrations, but the energy had shifted. The music continued, the champagne flowed, but the undercurrent of tension remained. Every glance toward Georgina and Ronaldo reminded everyone that the spectacle of wealth and fame could never fully mask human drama. Later, as Georgina retreated to the privacy of the bridal suite, she allowed herself a moment of rage. Tears had burned her eyes, not just from the wine but from the betrayal, the shock, the public humiliation. She thought of every whispered rumor, every judgmental glance she had endured over the years. And now, here was Irina, throwing not just wine, but a message. You are not untouchable. Ronaldo entered quietly, closing the door behind him. He looked at her. His partner, the mother of his children, the woman he had chosen to stand beside him, and felt a surge of protective fury. She'll regret this, he said softly. Though his jaw was tight with anger, Georgina's voice, calm but laced with fire, replied, Let her. Let the world see who she really is. And in that moment, she realized the true power of composure. Rage could burn, but dignity could withstand the fire. She would not let this moment define her. Not tonight. Not ever. Outside, the media would talk. Inside, the family would argue. And Irina would think she had won the night. But Georgina had something far more potent, control over her own story. And she would use it. The morning after the incident, the wedding that had promised elegance and perfection felt like a battlefield. The grand hall, now empty and silent, seemed to hum with the memory of last night's chaos. Champagne glasses, once filled with laughter and toasts, were now reminders of what had transpired. Georgina sat in the hotel suite, staring blankly at the mirror. The red wine stain on her gown had been removed, but the humiliation lingered like a shadow. Refusing to fade, she touched her chest lightly, as if to remind herself it had been nothing more than fabric ruined, nothing more than a moment. Yet the moment felt heavier than any gown could ever be. The cameras, the flashes, the whispers of guests. All of it had caught her unprepared. She had always been poised, always aware of the scrutiny surrounding her life, but nothing could have readied her for a glass of wine thrown with such intent, such malice, and with such precision. Ronaldo entered the suite quietly, his expression taut with controlled anger. He had been awake since dawn, reviewing footage from the night before. Every angle, every reaction, every second replayed in his mind like a high-definition reminder of the chaos Irina had caused. Gio, he said softly, though the edge in his voice betrayed him. Are you okay? Georgina met his eyes, her own reflecting the turmoil within. I'm managing, she said, voice tight. She had spent the night replaying the scene, the arc of the wine, the smirk on Irina's face. She could feel it still, the indignity, the raw sting of being humiliated in public. Ronaldo closed the distance between them, taking her hands in his. She went too far, he said quietly, voice carrying a weight of protectiveness. I should have seen this coming. I should have stopped her before she acted like that. Georgina shook her head. No one could have stopped her, Cristiano. Not you. Not me. She wanted this to happen. She's deliberate. The word hung in the air. Deliberate. There was no accident in Irina's actions. No slip of judgment. It was targeted, precise, calculated. And it cut deeper than any rumor, any whisper, any staged photo ever could. Outside the suite, the world had already begun to dissect the incident. Social media exploded in real time. Clips of Irina's bold moves circulated within minutes, amplified by hashtags, emojis, and a tide of speculation. Irina versus Georgina, wedding showdown. One headline read, "Red wine on red carpet, public feud revealed." Another blared. The narrative was spinning, shaping itself into a story far larger than the incident itself. Georgina's phone buzzed relentlessly. Messages of support flooded in, but so did questions, comments, and cruel insinuations. She scrolled through the feeds silently, absorbing the public scrutiny that had been unavoidable from the start of her life in the spotlight. And yet, this felt different. This wasn't just commentary. This was a battle played out in the open, with her as the central figure, the unwilling protagonist in a drama that was nobody's business but her own. Ronaldo, sensing her distress, held her close. "Let me handle the media," he said. "They'll write what they want, but we know the truth. We know what happened." Georgina nodded, but her mind was already replaying the confrontation, imagining every word, every angle, every possibility. She remembered the smirk, the fire in Irina's eyes, the deliberate trajectory of the glass. Every detail was etched into her memory, a reminder that appearances could never fully shield her from malice. Meanwhile, downstairs, Dolores had heard the commotion and descended to assess the situation. Her sharp eyes scanned the aftermath. A broken glass here, scattered chairs there, and the faint scent of spilled wine lingering in the air. She took a deep breath, calculating, observing, as she had always done. Her son was calm, composed, but she could see the simmering rage in his eyes. And Georgina, though composed, bore the invisible scars of public humiliation. Dolores approached the pair cautiously. "Cristiano," she said, voice neutral. "What exactly happened?" Before he could respond, Georgina spoke. "Irina threw a glass of wine on me. Deliberately." The words hung in the air like smoke. Dolores's eyes narrowed slightly, the first hint of emotion breaking through her usual stoic demeanor. "I see," she said quietly. "And you let it happen?" "I did what I had to do," Georgina replied calmly, though inside her fury simmered. "I maintained my composure. I didn't retaliate. I didn't escalate." Dolores nodded slowly. "Good. You must always maintain control. That is the only power you truly have." Georgina's lips pressed together. She knew this was as much advice as it was a subtle warning. Control could only go so far, especially when the instigator was someone like Irina. Unpredictable, influential, and unafraid of consequences. Later that day, Ronaldo confronted Irina privately. The hall where they spoke was deserted, sunlight pouring through tall windows, casting long shadows across the polished floors. He looked at her, his gaze steady, but fury simmering beneath the surface. "This is unacceptable," he said firmly. "What you did at the wedding is beyond any measure of civility or reason. You humiliated her in front of everyone." Irina's expression was unreadable, cool, almost dismissive. "She needed to understand her place," she said softly. Her words were precise, deliberate, each syllable measured. "I didn't mean to hurt her. Only to remind her that some things cannot be ignored." Ronaldo's jaw tightened. "This isn't a game, Irina. This is a wedding, a celebration. You crossed a line." Irina tilted her head, a faint smirk on her lips. "Lines are meaningless in the presence of truth. She thinks she belongs. She doesn't. She shouldn't." And tonight, she was reminded. Ronaldo's hands curled into fists, but he forced himself to remain composed. He was protective, furious, yet restrained. "You will not make her feel small again. Do you understand me?" Irina's smirk faded slightly. "Understood," she said softly, but the glint in her eyes hinted that the battle was far from over. Back in the suite, Georgina attempted to regain her equilibrium. Her hands shook slightly, but her mind was already strategizing, anticipating the inevitable media storm. Every angle, every headline, every comment had to be considered. She would not be caught unprepared again. She would reclaim her dignity and control the narrative. Ronaldo sat beside her, silently supportive. "No matter what happens," he said softly, "we face it together." Georgina nodded, drawing strength from his presence. For a brief moment, the world's chaos faded. She wasn't alone. She wasn't powerless. And although Irina had struck, the battle was far from lost. Hours later, the footage went viral. Social media exploded with reactions. Shock, outrage, admiration, speculation. News outlets debated endlessly, dissecting every angle, every expression, every possible motive. The incident was no longer just a wedding mishap. It had become a global spectacle. Georgina watched the storm unfold silently. She allowed herself a single, deep breath, centering her mind. Rage and humiliation burned within her, but she would not let them dictate her actions. Control, dignity, power, she would wield them like armor, and she would not fall prey to anyone. Not Irina, not the media, not even the judgment of the world, and somewhere deep inside, she felt the first flicker of resolve. This incident would not define her. It would strengthen her. It would prepare her for the battles yet to come. Outside, the city sparkled in the late afternoon sun. Inside, Georgina Shayk had emerged from humiliation into strategy. She was ready, and just like that, the wedding turned into chaos. A single glass, a single moment, and everything changed. Who will come out on top? Only time will tell. Stay tuned, because this story is far from over.